Heyman's words made Sabrina's expression change to that of shock. What was a black card? This could be said to be a VIP level card. Those who held this type of card were all super rich. This was a big bank in the country. In other words, the threshold for a person to receive a card here was higher than in other small banks. Below the black card, there was a bronze card, silver card, and gold card. Bronze for $1 million, silver for $50 million, and gold for $100 million. In other words, the black card was a representation of wealth. But after thinking things through, she thought that it was only right for Jack to receive this card. After all, his current balance was over $1 billion, not to talk about the fixed assets that he had on him. What privileges comes with this type of card? Jack asked. It was not that he was ignorant, it was just that being in the rich Alfonso family had limited his contact with the rich. Till now, although he'd heard of this type of card, he didn't know that much about it. Furthermore, most of the things that he heard were rumors that tend to be exaggerated. Heyman looked at Jack's calm expression and was impressed. Then he thought to himself, it seems that he's used to handling this size of money. Now that he's our client, I'm sure that we can benefit. This card is only given to those that have a $500 million to $1 billion deposit with our bank. It is a credit card. In other words, once you're given this card, it's like you have $2 billion on you. It's just that the billion that you've deposited will remain in the bank. Heyman began explaining about the black card. At this time, Jack caught something and couldn't help but ask, if the black card is for those that have a deposit of $500 million to $1 billion, does that mean that there are higher level cards? Yes, Mr. Jack. There's a black gold card. This is a card for those that have a deposit of $10 billion to $49 billion. There's a diamond card. This one is for those that have $50 billion to $100 billion in their accounts. Then, there's a platinum card for those that have over $100 billion in their accounts. Of course, our bank is of a higher level than the others in the country. So, our black card is that for account holders with at least $500 million. But if you go to other banks, it starts at $100 million. Heyman explained. Jack and Sabrina nodded. Back to the privileges, with the card in your hand, you can spend $1 billion from it. But once you start going above $1 billion, or in other words, your current deposit, it will be an overdraft. So it can be considered that you're taking a loan. But the loan will have to be repaid within the stated time with 0 interest. Furthermore, as long as your money is saved with our bank, it will be earning interest as time goes. As for your current amount that you've deposited, we can give you a 3% annual interest. Jack nodded after hearing this. What caught his attention was the 3% annual interest in his deposit. He thought of it and asked, System, does the interest count as income? Can it be multiplied? Correct. Saving hard-earned money can be said to be working. After all, it's like you're investing on the bank as they will be using your money to give loans and whatever. In that way, it's like they're helping you with work. So what you earn is considered as income by the system. But you have to know that, if you just save the money and stay idle, that money will not be multiplied. In other words, this system is to encourage hard working. If you laze around, then you'll be going against the system's purpose. As a result, it won't multiply anything if you're idle. Jack sighed within his head. This system and its logic again. Anyway, it wasn't like he could stay idle. He'll be working hard to earn more. Apart from that, you'll be able to carry out large transactions as long as they don't exceed the $5 billion threshold. In other words, the transactions can be completed without inconveniencing you to come to the bank. Heyman continued, pulling Jack's mind from the system. Then, there's a VIP service. Your accounts won't be frozen without notice. Again, you can easily transfer the money at any moment. Heyman went on to talk about several things like loans and whatever. The more he spoke, the more Sabrina's mouth gaped. She then thought to herself, the rich surely have privileges. In between somewhere, Ivy brought tea. Of course, she brought both coffee and tea, but Jack chose tea, the same as Sabrina. After all, it was almost noon. Who drank coffee in the afternoon? Well, there were some that did that, but Jack didn't like that. After about an hour, Jack and Sabrina walked out of the office together with Heyman, who had come to send them off. After all, Jack was a big client. For him, a branch manager, to be able to make an acquaintance with him was an honor. Mr. Jack, you're welcome to visit any time. It'll be my honor to help you if there's anything that you need, within my capacity, of course. Heyman stated with a smile. Of course, Mr. Heyman. Jack replied with a faint smile on his lips. Though, Heyman didn't mind that Jack wasn't that enthusiastic as he'd already seen the way that Jack behaved. But you should be prepared to do a few more upgrades. Jack stated as he and Sabrina entered the elevator. After which, the doors closed, leaving the confused Heyman on the 7th floor together with his secretary. After a few seconds, the confusion on his face faded away and was replaced by a broad smile. He was a smart person and immediately understood what Jack meant. After getting out of the bank, Jack drove in the Bentley Continental GT as they headed towards the Business Overlord building. Jack decided to check it out first. Although he trusted Sabrina, but what he'd experienced back at the Prince and Princess Palace was something that made him want to make sure that everything was okay before paying. After all, a Eurocopter on top of a garage with no means of reaching it? Jack wanted to make sure that nothing like that happened as the system seemed not to care about where to pack things. No, it never asked where he wanted them to be packed, apart from the Bugatti Veyron, of course. Along the way, Jack thought of the Prince and Princess Palace. He then turned his attention to the still-dazed Sabrina and asked, "Is there a helipad in the Prince and Princess Palace?" Huh. Sabrina, who had yet to take in what had happened in the bank, was surprised by Jack's question. But after a moment, she regained her composure and answered, "And no, I don't think I've seen it before." "Why are you asking? Do you want to buy a helicopter?" Sabrina's answer was within Jack's expectations. Although it was only in the lower probability, he still thought that Sabrina had forgotten about it. But looking at her clueless expression, Jack felt that it was a little strange. After a moment of silence, Jack spoke, "Not at this moment. But I just wanted to know. After all, that place is big. Then, do you know about the history of that palace?" Sabrina thought for a moment and replied, "According to what I know, there was a person that used to live here in Inchoate City. He had a son who had a successful career. In the end, the son of his wanted to build a smart home for him in secret to surprise him on his birthday. But before the construction reached in the middle, the old man found about it. So, now that it was no longer a surprise, the son asked his father if he wanted the smart home. In the end, the old man said that a city wasn't a good place for him to relax in his old age. So, he told his son to build it in another piece of land that he'd bought. The son wanted to demolish the foundation that he'd already built. In the end, the old man stopped him. He had been staying in Inchoate City for long, and he was the reason for a big part of its development. So, he decided that the foundation would be left, but in the end, normal luxurious mansions were to be built there. As of that time, the advanced garage had already been finished. And after the construction was done, the old man decided that the house was going to be sold at a price of $38 million. This price for a mansion, although the mansion was quite luxurious, it was high for the residents of the city. After all, the mansion had no commercial value as the old man prohibited that. The palace couldn't be sold after being bought for a profit. The old man's aim of setting such a low price for such luxurious mansions, although it was a loss, was to attract another person to Inchoate City, one that could help develop Inchoate in his place. Sabrina finished her narration at this point. Then, she looked at Jack, who was still processing what he'd heard, and said with a beautiful smile, "And it seems that the old man's wish has been fulfilled by your presence, Mr. Jack." In response, Jack said, "I guess so." But he didn't talk about the garage and the helipad as he'd found the reason as to why they were more advanced. Not long after that, they arrived closer to the center of the city. Even from a distance, Jack could clearly see the tallest building. He'd seen it in his previous trips in the heart of the city, but he'd paid no attention to it. After all, he'd seen taller buildings in Crystal City. Vroom. The Bentley Continental GT sped up before entering the underground parking of the building. Immediately after, Jack and Sabrina alighted from the car. A security guard came a few seconds later. He knew Sabrina as he was there when the building was being handed over to her after the developer was done. He was the current captain of the current team that was on the day shift. "Greetings, Mrs. Sabrina." After a bow, he greeted her before greeting Jack. But it was obvious that he was treating Sabrina with more respect than he did with Jack. Nobody could blame him. Jack was just 19 years old and his clothes were nothing flashy. So, the captain thought that Sabrina had come to inspect the building while at the same time bringing this youth to broaden his horizon. Jack, on the other hand, didn't mind at all. It wasn't like being feared or being revered would give him more money. But what he noticed was that it seemed that Homescope Properties Limited had a cooperation with Good Vision Security Limited. Or maybe he was just overthinking things, as Good Vision Security Limited was amongst the best security companies present in the country and the most reputable one in Inchoate. As a landmark building of Inchoate City, it had to receive the best security. "Captain Tim, this is Mr. Jack. Here's here to check out the building. He's going to buy it." Mr. Jack, this is Tim, the captain of the guards of the day shift. Sabrina smiled as she introduced the two. Sabrina's words immediately made Tim flustered. After all, he'd been superficial with Jack not long ago. Who knew that this was going to be the new employer of his? So, he immediately gave a deep bow to Jack and said, Mr. Jack, I'm sorry for my ignorance right now. Tim knew very well that a person that could purchase a floor of the building was of a higher status than Sabrina. For him to treat Sabrina more respectfully than the other party, it was the same as stepping on the other person's reputation. Don't mind, Jack said before turning to Sabrina. Let's check the building out. Okay, Sabrina replied before looking at Tim. We're going to check it out. You can come with us. Tim nodded before the trio took the elevator that was present in the underground parking lot and headed to the first floor. Jack looked around and was impressed by the level of the building. The first floor was well designed and the layout wasn't messy. This was an office building. So, the whole first floor was a closed office layout. The offices were as big as 300 square meters. Then, there was one office that overlooked the northern part of the city. From there, although one couldn't see clearly due to the other buildings, at least, one could see the night lights. After going to the second floor and the third, Jack found that the layout was different from the other. But one thing remained the same. It was that the lobby area was the same size and same design. The only difference would be the colors and decorations. After seeing that everything was good in the first 5 floors, Jack decided to go to the 15th floor. He knew all too well that going to all the floors would surely tire them out. After all, each floor spanned for thousands of meters. Just like that, Jack and the duo finally arrived on the topmost floor. Of course, they had used the elevator that, according to Sabrina, had access to all floors. Well, even Jack could see that from the numbers that were written on the buttons. The 30th floor was completely different. The eastern and western sides of the horizon could be seen clearly. The desk and seat of the big boss was stationed in the eastern side, facing the west. According to what anybody could see about the layout here was that the one using this office could bath in the morning sun and enjoy the setting sun in the evening. Well, the waiting area was in the western part of the floor. As for the northern side of the office, there was the meeting hall. Jack looked at it and found that it was quite big in that 150 people could fit in. On the southern part of the floor, there was a living area. Once one entered through the door, he would enter the living room. There were 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and finally, there was a washroom and a bathroom. Things here were quite advanced, and the room looked no different from the palace. Jack was satisfied with this setting. After all, if he was at work and got tired, there would be no need for him to drive back home. He could just stay here. After seeing that everything was okay, Jack then paid the $700 million in full, no balance. After that, the group finally decided to leave the building. After all, it was already lunchtime. On this, Jack decided that he was going to treat the duo to a good meal. On reaching the ground floor, Jack found that it was a big open space that was filled with different types of things that could help people relax or entertain them. There was a place where children could play as well. In other words, the ground floor was present for those working to relax or entertainment. Of course, the activities were separated from each other, and there was no space for games like soccer or cricket. After getting out of the building via the front door, they found that there was a commotion. It seemed that there was a person that was trying to enter but was being prevented from accessing the building. What do you mean that I cannot enter? We're going to buy this building. So, I have to check it out first. A man said to the 2 guards that were blocking his way. I'm sorry, sir. It's not that we don't want you to enter. It's just that you can't enter without the manager of Homescope Properties Limited. After all, she's the one in charge of the building. One of the guards replied. Do you know who I am? I'm Frank Dante. Dante, you got that? If you continue trying to stop me from entering, I'll make sure that you won't get even janitor's job in this city. The man spoke in a deep voice laced with anger and threat. Please, sir, don't make things hard for us. We're only guards here. According to the rules, we cannot let you into the building unless you're the owner or you're here with the real estate agency manager. The other guard replied. Although they were scared, they still won't allow him to enter. Now that you know that you're a guard, you should know your place. You're nothing but a dog. If you continue this, Humph, I'm going to make sure that you're going to suffer. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, but we can't let you in. What do you mean? Isn't Mrs. Sabrina inside here? I was told that she left in the morning. I've tried contacting her, but she's not picking up the phone. Just as the guard was about to respond to the aggressive man, the door to the building opened and 3 people stepped out. The captain had already heard about how his subordinate was having it hard, so he rushed ahead. The person that was dishing out threats was a middle-aged man with a black suit. He had short black hair that shone in the noon sun. Currently, he was putting on dark glasses. "Hello, sir. Please don't make things hard. I know that you also know the rules here. So please, don't make things hard for us," Tim said. "Who are you?" Frank frowned as he stared at Tim. "I'm Tim, the day shift captain Dash." Even before Tim could finish introducing himself, he was pushed to the side as Frank had already seen Sabrina. He rushed towards her and began barking. "Mrs. Sabrina, what's the meaning of this? Look at what is happening here. I've tried calling you all this time, but you didn't receive any of my calls. If I hadn't tried here, I wouldn't have gotten a chance to meet you today. I was sent by the head of the Dante family to come and look at the building before the decision is made. Now, I'm starting to have second thoughts about this." A barrage of words were thrown at Sabrina, and Jack, who was standing next to Sabrina, couldn't take it anymore. This guy was behaving arrogantly as if he owned the place. Having just bought the place, there was no way that Jack could allow a dog to bark wildly at the entrance. "Hey, can you have a little bit of self-respect and act like a grown-up? You're wearing a suit, but you're not acting with any type of etiquette at all," Jack said with a frown. Frank gazed at Jack ferociously and said, "Do you know who you're talking to, young man?" Frank hadn't expected that there was someone that would try lecturing him. Furthermore, the person that did so was only a youth. "What does your identity matter to me? Just behave like a civilized person and stop making noise here like a rabid dog." Jack didn't care about the identity of this person. After all, no matter what, he was just a member of a big family in a small city. It was not like he was from a big family that could threaten Jack. Anger could be seen in Frank's eyes as he stared at Jack coldly. It was as if he was going to eat him the next second. But Jack didn't care and remained calm. Frank pointed at Jack as he looked at Sabrina and reprimanded. "See here. If you can't teach your son or brother, I'll help you in educating him. How dare a small brat like him towel, arg." However, before he finished whatever he was going to day next, he screamed in pain as he tried retracting the hand that was pointed towards Jack. "I don't like some nobodies pointing their fingers at me." At this moment, Jack's cold voice echoed.